we're now ready to install Internet Security and Acceleration Server 2006 Standard Edition. To begin, I've popped in my ISA Server 2006 CD-ROM, and the auto run has popped up. So, I'm going to choose the option over here on the right side called Install ISA Server 2006. Now you'll notice the ISA Server installer starts in the upper left corner, and because we're completing basically the first stage of the setup. So, we've got this screen here. We'll go ahead and click Next. We'll agree to the licensing. We'll scroll all the way through, and then click Next. And enter your serial number, and then click Next. And now you're ready for the installation. There's two options on the installation, a typical or a custom. If you just need to get ISA Server up and running, I'd recommend utilizing the typical option, and that'll take care of the main program features to be installed. But for this video, I'm going to show you what shows up if you happen to choose custom. So we'll click Custom and click Next. Now, there's actually only two major components that ISA installs. One is the ISA Server components itself, so the services to run it all. And then the other is the ISA Server management tools, the tools to allow you management of the ISA Server. Now, if you are doing a new server installation, you want it to be both of those options. Now, if you were to install just the management tools, say on another station where you want to be able to remotely manage your ISA server, that's when you would disable the option for the ISA server and install just the ISA server management tools. Now, underneath the ISA server, you'll see there's one option here, Advanced Logging. You probably want to install that one as well. That'll utilize an MSDE engine to basically give you some options for viewing the audit logs. So we'll go for all the options and click Next. Now, here it's asking us what are the address ranges of your internal network. Now, most ISA servers will have two network cards on them. One addressing the inside of your network and one talking to the outside of your network. And so the internal network, in my case, I'm going to click on the Add button, and it's going to let me specify which is my internal network adapter. Now, when I click Add, that happens to be my 172 network is my inside network. So I'm going to choose my local area connection 2 network interface and click OK. Now, that should be the only range that I need. So I'll click OK, and then I'll click Next. Now, here, the next option is that the ISA server does have a firewall client that you can load up on all your desktop PCs. And the older client that you might need on a Windows 2000 or Windows 98 or ME or NT4 doesn't support encryption back and forth. Whereas the current client, which will load on Windows 2000 and above products, does do encryption back and forth, so that the encryption from the client to pass its request to the ISA server. Now, they're asking us here, do we want to allow the non-encrypted firewall clients to actually make connections? And so if we're going to load the firewall client on 98 or ME or NT4, then we'd choose this option. But I'm not interested in supporting any of those clients, so I'm going to leave that option clear and click Next. Now, the next thing it's going to do is going to go ahead and, it's warning me, telling me it's going to shut down all of these services if I'm not running them right now. And it's permanently going to disable the Internet Connection Firewall and Internet Connection Sharing Services, as well as the IP Network Address Translation Services. And that's okay, so we'll click Next, and then Install. And over the course of the next couple minutes, it's going to install ISA Server 2006 on this system. First, by copying the files it needs, doing a little bit of network verification in the registry and all that sort of stuff. Then it's going to go ahead and build the services so that there's services set up so that when this server reboots, it starts up and begins running the ISA server right away, even before people log in. Let me fast forward over this install. No need for you to watch this. You're going to be watching it on your own machine. There's not that much exciting that goes on anyways. All right. Well, it looks like the ISA part's done, and now it's installing some additional components. Notice how the window up here in the upper left corner, the installation wizard, is now on the additional components section. There's nothing you have to do at this point. It'll just keep running and installing these components and getting them set up as we need them. And then it'll go through the installation, the final installation process. And our ISA server is installed. So now what we need to do is if we click Finish, it'll just close out. But if you check this checkbox here, it'll fire up the ISA Server Management utility. So let's click Finish, and we'll let that utility pop up. Now, we're also going to get a help document here that's going to give us some additional information about ISA for us, telling us that we should do a Microsoft update, so that way we can get uploads or updates for ISA Server in addition to our operating system. And they've also got a best practices analyzer to help us take a look at how our ISA server is doing. So those are things you want to take a look at once you get it up and running, and we'll have videos up here on the site for that. Now, this is what your interface for ISA server is going to look like. You'll notice over on the left a common navigation options. So you've got the ISA server, and you've got its monitoring configuration and the firewall policy configuration for it. And then the VPN components, because it can be used as an incoming VPN server or for establishing point-to-point VPN connections. And also a configuration area where you can make the configuration of the actual ISA server take place. So that's where you're going to need to go next. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you want to grab the appropriate videos here from learnisaserver.com.